I'm joined tonight by Amber Kwentus, who is a quantum soul activator and embodiment coach based in America. So, Amber, I'd love it if you could tell me just where you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about your background and your journey into what you do today, please.
Sure. So yes, I live in St. Louis, Missouri. Here in the United States, that's considered what we call the gateway to the West. So we have the arch here, which is that passageway. Um, and just for some historical reference, so Lewis and Clark, who first traveled through America, they traveled through here. And so that's what this part of the country is really known for is Lewis and Clark and for their stops along the way, and discovering in the West. And yeah, so I was born in Illinois. I grew up in the country primarily. And then at 8, my dad remarried. My dad divorced my biological mom and remarried, and we moved to this area. And we moved over to this small town called Wood River, Illinois, which most people probably have never heard of. At least some people have probably heard of St. Louis. Wood River is known for refineries, and it was a lot of industrial and blue collar type workers. And over the years, as some of those industries were moved out of the country, the refineries remained, but not a lot of the jobs remained. And so left our area pretty poor, still is pretty poor, and all the things that come with that and the poverty and things. My dad was an auto worker and worked in Wentzville, Missouri, which is on the other side of St. Louis. And my stepmom, she worked in a banking facility. My biological mom is mentally ill and lives in a nursing home. And so my journey, my path, growing up with a mentally ill mother, was definitely a part of my passion, and kind of fueled me early on, even before I think I fully realized that that was a passion. So my own journey took me into my own mental health issues. And, it was in my late teens and early 20s when, I developed a pretty healthy addiction issue, to alcohol and to drugs. And I was just speaking earlier with you about, leaving the St. Louis area feeling like it really had nothing for me. And of course, in our 20s, when we think we're all about self discovery and we want to just go out and seek the world. So I actually left home in my early 20s to be a truck driver. And so I did that for a few years. Um, and then I ended up going to jail actually because I was addicted to methamphetamine. And the guy that I was with at the time, we had purchased Sudafed, and we purchased over the amount and were caught on camera, and they caught us with a bunch of Sudafed and things. So jail saved my life. And yeah, it's a really potent part of my story, is because I needed that to be able to stop. And of course, at the time, I viewed it as a negative, but I still work in the corporate field currently. I'm still transitioning into my own business. So I am a counselor, a mental health counselor as well. And I actually counsel federal probation um, people that are, so either pretrial or post conviction. And so my story, um, well, I feel like, God, spirit, the divine is always putting me in these roles where parts of my story are used. So it definitely is um, apropos currently, So
That's really interesting because you have a first-hand experience that most people, I imagine, working in that role just wouldn't have, would they? So that must offer
yeah,
you a really unique insight into these people's lives and their individual challenges.
certainly, because of the poverty, because of the drug addiction, because of the traumas I've experienced in jail. Yeah, it does offer me some really good insight and helps me to be able to connect. Because a lot of my clients are African American, and there's that racial divide, and I'm a female. So we have to kind of crush down those divides pretty quickly for me to be able to work with them. And so typically when they come in, they see one version of me. And then I kind of, while I use Reiki and I use my intuitive healing and my counseling to be able to bust down some of those, barriers, I connect in with their heart and I, find a way to connect with them initially that helps soften everything. I'm not saying it works 100% of the time because I have clients that are just not going to hear anything I have or want, and that's okay. I'm not for everyone. But for those that come in that I'm able to connect with, um, I love that my talents have combined into this. Um, so, yeah, the jail experience led me to Springfield, Illinois, which is the capital of Illinois in the middle of the state. And there is where I first learned how to be sober and how to be an adult and start being responsible. But it was a rocky 7 years for me. I did get married, and I was actively involved in 12-step recovery. And things were, well for a time, but then, my husband and I actually we got hooked on pain medication, and it ended up, just tearing apart our marriage. And I wanted to get better, and he wasn't ready to at the time. And so I ended up moving back to the St. Louis area in July of 2011. So almost 10 years now that I've moved back to this area. And I had to start over from scratch. And I was 32, I'm 41 now. And over these last, almost 10 years, that dark night of the soul that I went into after that divorce was the catalyst for everything for me. It actually opened me up to Reiki. It opened me up to intuitive healing and to other, methods. I was raised Christian, and I was raised with a lot of those stigmas and just the mysticism and the unknowns, and then therefore judging and placing labels on things because this is bad, because it was outside of the Christian beliefs. But through Reiki, I've learned that I can have a relationship with God, and that I can also, learn about myself, that I can embody all of these gifts that I seek to give out in the world, and that it really makes me, all the things that I believe God wants for me is to be powerful so that I can be a powerful change here. Um, so when I moved back, I was living actually in my best friend's basement, and, just really at that low point in life. I weighed 100 pounds more. I still wasn't quite done with my addiction. I have almost 8 years clean and sober next month. So, I came back with some struggles, and God essentially, in my opinion, just had to really get me to a breaking point where I was ready to truly surrender everything. And I think we all go through that as humans. Just like with jail, I wouldn't have been able to quit meth without that, which that would have killed me. This took me to a whole other level with being broken in my own ego, and just my own definition of who I thought I was supposed to be, so that spirit could come in and guide me in a way that I could really be used. During my time in Springfield, I was in treatment, and I sat across from a counselor, and I'll never forget because he asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, well, I want to do what you do. And it was the first time in my life that I really had that come through that powerfully. And I knew that was something from soul. And so that counselor helped me to get on my path to becoming a counselor. And I did complete my bachelor's degree when I was living in Springfield. And when I moved back and started over with everything, I wasn't sure what I was going to do at that point, if counseling was even really my path or my journey. I was in social work for 5 years. And during that time, I really worked on myself. I got attuned to Reiki Master, and I really just deep dove into myself. I did a lot of just a lot of my own self journeying. I didn't have a lot of people, meaning a lot of guides in my life. I had my AA sponsor, I had a few spiritual people, but I didn't really feel like I was connected to, a soul family. And so for me, a big passion of mine has been to create this soul family. It's been to create a tribe of like-minded people. So I guess I'm multifaceted because it's like I have lots of different visions that I feel like God has given me. And this Reiki family, my soul family, um, began when I first started doing attunements on others. In that was like 2017. Um, so about the last 4 years is when everything really kind of just up leveled again. And I really started to get out there as far as my Reiki went. And then I've been doing counseling, mental health counseling now for 3 years. Um, but what God gave me as a vision in 2017 was really, it was a combination of everything. And so I didn't know the word coaching at the time. I didn't know, honestly, about like 3D, 4D, 5D. I didn't know about all of this spiritual world that existed beyond what I had been taught here in St. Louis, because this area tends to be very Christian in its ideologies and its thinking. And so, therefore, there's a lot of limitations here. But last year during COVID, right around the same time, one of my Reiki students was introduced me to the New Earth online retreat. And so I got onto this massive retreat with people all over the world. And I started to connect in with people that thought like me and that believed like me. And my soul lit up because I was like, oh my gosh, these are my people. Like I found them. And I felt at home. And I started learning things about the quantum field. And I started learning about timeline healing. And I started learning about deeper levels of spiritual growth. And then throughout this last year, I've been investing in myself, investing in my business. My quantum soul activation all came through my own healing in this last year. The embodiment coaching came through this last year, and that is the bigger vision for me of what I'm moving towards. So I currently do my mental health counseling. I do Reiki. I do intuitive healing, and I, have master classes, and I do work one-on-one with people. So
there's tremendous synergy, isn't there, between all those elements, and it all comes
yeah,
down to that going below the surface and working at that energy level, doesn't it? And
yeah,
I think when you talk about the connections you've made more recently, I think there's something amazing happens when you connect with people, whether they're clients or whether they're friends. But when you connect at that energetic level, it's just a tremendous power is tapped into, isn't it? Which is an incredible thing. And your story is just incredible in so many ways. Just a couple of things I'd love to just go back on the 12-step process that you mentioned. I'm currently
yeah,
involved in a project with an AA group where we're working on some supporting materials to help people going through exactly that process in recovery from alcohol addiction. And of course, the 12-step process isn't only for people overcoming alcohol addiction. Excuse me. It's equally valid for people overcoming any form of addiction. And one of the books, of course, at the heart of the AA material is the book Daily Reflections, which
yeah.
I've got here. And whether or not you are an AA member, whether or not you are currently an alcoholic or you are sober, or whether you've never been involved in it, this particular book is a tremendous book of reflections. And you don't have to identify as Christian or any particular faith to be able to really truly appreciate some of the wisdom that is embodied in the 12 steps.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes people need to go beyond that, and as you said, go into a much deeper journey.
Yeah.
Again, the 12 steps sort of embodies in a way the spiritual journey as well, doesn't it? There's so many layers as you progress on that journey.
That that's perfect actually. It's funny that you said that. So like, I have a Reiki a mentor in my life now. So my Reiki master, she introduced Reiki to me. I got my attunements, but we didn't end up having a long-term journey together. And then this other woman who entered my life was also involved in 12-step recovery. And so we had these similar bonds. And She and I attempted to launch a program 2 summers ago called Beyond the 12 Steps. And so it was all about taking what we've learned in the 12-step recovery, but going beyond and outside. And so many people, just like with the Christian faith or with AA and 12 steps, there's fear about, going outside of these boundaries or thinking outside of this box because you've become conditioned to this way of living. And you think if you go beyond it, that that's somehow disrespectful to the thing that you have that's at your very basis, and it really isn't. So we took a few women and we were trying to get them to see like there's more, there's deeper journeying, and you can do these other things that are going to benefit. You don't have to not have your program, but I've used 12-step recovery for food. I've used 12-step recovery for alcohol, for drugs. So what you were saying earlier, it really is, there's a slogan in the 12-step recovery community that it's a design for living, because it is. And it's applicable to everybody. Truly, everybody could use a 12-step program, in my opinion. But even just as a basis, as a good way of living. And, and in my codependency and in my own personal relationships, I've used 12 steps. Like, it's been powerful. Yeah.
Was there any singular thing sort of in your journey that triggered you to get out of your own battle to addiction? Was there any particular point where you had an enlightenment? You said, I can do this. I know what I need to do.
Well, I would definitely say that, like, when I moved back in 2011, it wasn't as much a physical bottom for me. So in alcoholism and drug addiction, we do have physical bottoms. Obviously, jail is a big physical bottom when you're having that taken from you. But even losing my home or having to move back, really, it was the emotional bottom for me. It was that feeling of absolute worthlessness that I felt, that I was like, I can no longer feel like this. I didn't have to necessarily be living under a bridge. And I see this a lot to my clients. Like, people have this perception of addiction. Oh, they're worse than me. And then we do this comparison and contrast. And, oh, well, I'm not that bad, so maybe I don't have a problem. But addiction is real and alive. And really, addiction is just distractions, and, comes in many different forms. And our society, especially here in America, is inundated with distractions and addictions. And, oh, you can just have this over here, and keep you busy and away from yourself, which I think COVID really brought a lot of that to the surface.
I was going to ask you, because obviously the COVID topic, much as I try not to let it sort of always be present,
Right.
none of us can escape that. None of us can escape the impact it's made on our lives. And I imagine for somebody like yourself, working with people with addiction, I mean, what's it been like? What have you seen over the last 12 months? How has the COVID situation affected that particular area of life?
I think it's been positive for people that want to look at things. But I think it's also, for people that don't want to look at it, they've just gone deeper into their addictions. They've gone deeper into depression and into their mental health issues. I've definitely seen an increase and a rise in people that come in asking for assistance as far as like an antidepressant, or even, getting a psychological evaluation, because they just are like, all the things came to the surface. The muck comes up and then they don't know what to do with it. So yeah, it's definitely, and as a professional, it's helped me to really grow, and to really get very succinct with people. Like, frankly, my clients, to begin with, you have to be pretty direct with them. But I feel the sense of urgency now. Like, there's just, it's at a soul level. It really is, between people that are going to check out or not. And I have to just be very direct with people and be like, what are you going to choose, sometimes, without using that wording, but like, you are at that turning point right now, and as sad as it is, I'm not going to be able to reach everyone, because I can't. I hope to plant a seed. But I have seen, for those that really reach that point, I've seen some breakthroughs this year that have actually been really good too.
It's really amazing, and there are so many great stories as well coming out of such a turbulent time. So,
Yes.
talk to me a little bit more about your role as an embodiment coach. Then, tell me what is an embodiment coach, and what do you do in that field?
Sure. So for me, as I was speaking into earlier about understanding, um, the different fractions of myself, how splintered we can become through our addictions, through our distractions, which again, food, sex, drugs, alcohol, social media, like all these different things that keep us splintered off, relationships and that codependency. So I'm going to give you a really good example of something I healed through this last year. So I have this tendency as an empath, as many of us who are sensitive or empathic do, to attract a narcissist into our lives, meaning somebody who tends to be manipulative and controlling, where frankly, we have allowed ourselves to become disempowered. I had allowed myself, because of these roles, to be a victim and to be disempowered. And I was giving my power over to these people in my life. However, my mind was telling me they were taking it from me. So, embodiment for me has been all about reclaiming my power, reclaiming my own serenity and like my own soul and my own choice and my own voice and standing true to who I am. And that has been such a journey this last year. One of the main narcissists in my life is my boss. And so in my corporate job, um, there were so many things that came to the surface last year because of COVID and so many shifts around just our job roles and things. And hooey, by August, I was like about tapped out. And really, it was just, again, all of this stuff coming to the surface that I had to heal, that it was no longer, I could no longer not look at it. I've been in this position many times in my marriage, in my relationships, where God's like, okay, you have two choices here. You can stay or you can run. If you run, you're going to keep repeating the same thing again and again. And it's like, damn it. Oh, I actually have to turn around and face this thing that I really don't want to have to look at, because I'm just going to be really blunt here. For empaths, for victims, it can be very comfortable to be in that role because you get attention from it, because you get pity from it. Oh, poor you, which led right into my addictive thinking and my behaviors and actually kept me pretty sick because I was disconnected from myself. But, in turning to him last year through a coach of mine, she helped me to understand my boundaries and she helped me to get really clear on that. And so boundaries are one huge thing that I work with in embodiment coaching. Owning your voice, owning your truth. We get clear on what your power is and what your vision is, and manifesting all of the things that you want in your life, your goals and your dreams and your desires, most potently inside of you and not based on somebody else's external perception or what you think you should be doing to try to prove your worth. Because I realized that, like, I love counseling, I love what I do, but I'm more than this. And that this was given to me as a building block, but that a lot of the drive behind getting a degree and spending loads of money on a piece of paper was because I was trying to prove my worth.
Hmm.
In the United States, they hold everybody up on this thing. Well, you get a degree. Even my dad was one of the biggest pushers in my life about getting a degree because he didn't have one. And he wanted safety and security for me. And that was the way he thought I needed safety and security. So, yeah. But embodiment coaching, it's one-on-one support, but it's also, that community, that tribe that I talked about. So I have different groups on Facebook where, like, I have one group that's a core wound healing group where I hosted 4 different challenges about core wounds, these things that go back to our childhood that really are at the very base of who we are. And it incorporates, my psychological work, my addiction work, my count, like all of the things into one, and my spiritual work. And then, there's, Reiki. And so I just have a couple different avenues for people, to connect and however they want. But because people can get through embodiment through Reiki, or people can get through embodiment through their own personal process, through counseling and other means, or through 12-step recovery. And then beyond that, it's just whatever that resonates with that person's soul. And I think that was a big switch for me that I got to learn through 12-step recovery, is that there is no one way to God. There's no one way to source. Like, we all have our own journey and paths. And so my biggest mission here is to just support people on their mission, where they're at. That's why I have these different levels, of offering and meeting people where they're at, whether that be traditional mental health counseling, or if you want to go deeper into the Reiki, or if you want to do the embodiment, and we can just I just want to journey with people.
So ultimately, sort of everything that you work with comes down fundamentally to enabling and empowering people to accept absolute responsibility for their life. And people find that, I think, a very scary concept, because it means accepting responsibility for all the negative things in your life. But once you do that, you also have a tremendous power then, don't you, to manifest the positive. But one has to come with the other, and that comes down to the absolute responsibility, doesn't it?
Yes. And it's really in mental health counseling with my clients, probably the biggest thing I struggle with them. I had a client literally before just today that we went round and round about that, because they refuse to take responsibility over their life and consistently want to be the victim to this and that. And the more I shine a mirror on that, the more uncomfortable it becomes, because I don't play little anymore. I don't play small. And I'm just very direct with people again, because I just don't feel like this is the time that we can play small anymore. I do it in a loving way, but I'm very direct.
And I think sometimes that's necessary, isn't it? I think sometimes we have to be, and especially given the challenges we've seen over the last 12 months, just over 12 months now, is one thing this situation has proven is it's no good looking to other people and trying to blame anybody else. It is not going to help change the situation. If you want to transform anything, you've got to start by transforming yourself, haven't you? So
and it all begins in the mind and your mental mindset, and again, what you're choosing each and every day, because each one of us, we chooses our reality each and every day. We wake up and the thinking starts our day, and then you make the choices. And when you take radical responsibility for your life, you can see where you've been making those choices that have led you to where you are, and then you can act differently. You can make better choices, and you can say, oh wait, I'm playing a victim here. Oh man, I'm taking advantage of someone here. I don't need to do that. You can get back into your body, then you embody that, and then you keep growing from it.
It sort of reminds me of something I discovered in Stephen Covey's amazing book, which is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this was a real eye-opening moment for me when I read the passage, and he simply stated that we can't control the situation we're in, but we can control our reaction to it. And that is such an empowering approach to life, isn't it? Say, I can control how I react to anything.
Yes.
But it requires a lot of self-work to do that, doesn't it?
Right, because yes, responding versus reacting. It's definitely one of the things I focus on in counseling as well. How and I've been guilty of that too before COVID. Anger is an emotion, because I've healed. Oh, this is another aspect of embodiment, is healing all around. I said core wounds, but also around the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine energies, that balance that we need to come into. In wounded masculine energy, I was trying to force my control, and I was trying to be very vocal and loud in not a loving way, but a forceful, controlling. I need to tell you these things, and so they're just going to shut you down when you're trying to come at them, versus trying to just see them and show them that you love and care about them, and that you just want what's best for them. But it's like that session earlier. This is such a great example, because I could speak to him in a firm and somewhat loud manner, because he needed to hear what I had to say, but he also knew it was coming from love, and that it was direct and it was firm, like a parent. That when a parent disciplines a child, and when it's coming from that place of like, I'm trying to just redirect you to show you that there's a better way.
It sounds like what you're doing is having an amazing impact, really massive impact on people's lives. I think it's a really amazing thing you're doing. We're gonna have to sort of wrap up in a moment. I could carry on talking to you for absolutely hours, but I'm aware that you're a busy lady. You have things you need to do. But just before we finish off, where do you see yourself going over the next sort of 12, 24 months? Where do you see you taking yourself and your business?
So yes, this last year has been all the foundation, the fundamentals, and definitely my own embodiment. I've just started really owning my truth out on social media and like getting into my own power fully. And it's taken a year of journeying of myself to be able to do that. And just saying this is who I am unapologetically, you know, and just really being bold with it. So in the next 12 months, I see, yeah, that there's going to be a lot more movement with this. And I see, you know, a better fit for me with my counseling practice. I actually, it's funny, I have an interview today. Shh, don't tell. No, just kidding. But for a potential position with a counseling agency that actually helps soul entrepreneurs like me to develop their own agency. So it's like totally aligned. I feel like God's already done it for me, and I'm just going through the formalities. So, but I feel like that's my next step in my journey, as well as continuing to work on my own healing journey and on, you know, like my online presence, but still doing the counseling because all of it's one. Long-term goal is, you know, I want to have, well, there's a Divine Transformation Academy that my friends and I have envisioned where we're helping women and children. And I see this as massive in the St. Louis area, but it's a whole community that we're going to have a physical space here. For me, I've seen when people were talking about 5D, I envisioned like this whole, you know, the new earth that we've been talking about in the spiritual realm. But it was all like, my husband's very grounded, so we joke about this. It was all kind of like unicorns and rainbows. And he was like, none of that makes sense to me. Well, no, I get it. So I've had to have, you know, the divine show me a closer vision of what that looks like now. And what I've seen is this, the light workers, the healers that are here like myself, we're these little pockets all over the globe. We have our communities where we are self-sustaining and where we are teaching about embodiment and health and about lifestyle choices. We are breaking away from the cultural norms to really create the new earth that's actually going to be healthy and vibrant and whole.
And
So
I think that is a brilliant note to finish on, because I think there is a movement, an energetic movement towards creating a new version of reality, essentially. And I think it's much needed. I think it's much overdue. We have to move beyond the current model, which is based on consumerism and material value, to a higher level. And I think that will come over time. And I think it's people like yourself are leading that movement. Amber, thank you ever so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to speak to you. And I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
all right. Thank you so much. It was such an honor.